And then next, the immigration and its impact on politics, economics, race relations, and impact on social welfare policies. So one of the things that has also shaped discussion in social welfare policy issues, social welfare policies and things like that, is the question of immigration. Immigration has shaped politics very, very much. I don't have the time to get into the details here. But what you're going to find out is just that there are many people today who are very, very concerned. Because when you look at the data, essentially when you look at the data very carefully, this is something that has been established. Generally, minorities tend to vote, most minorities tend to vote the Democratic Party, okay? So some people are very concerned that the more immigrants come here, okay, the more most likely one party is going to gain more from that than the other party, okay? And there's some legitimate concern about that. But part of the reason is simply because maybe we don't have to get into the detail, but the point is just that. So you can see how immigration now begins to have some impact on politics. If I know that more people are going to come into my constituency, but most likely they are going to increase the votes for the other party, I may not tell you categorically this is the case, but I may begin to raise some flag about some of these immigrants, okay? And then in terms of economics, some people feel immigrants demand certain social support or services, and all this support and services is going to be given to them through taxpayers' money. And so some people feel, why should you tax me? I didn't tell this person to immigrate to this country or whatever. Why should you tax me in order to support this person? And this thing is not just taking place now, but you will see in the book, for instance, that even in the past when some Europeans came to this country from Ireland, from Germany, they experienced this kind of pushback, okay? For instance, the German immigrants who came here, they introduced some new political ideologies and things like that, and some people started becoming afraid of them because they were more organized, if you like, kind of, okay? And then when we talk about race relations, again, that can be a real issue. I don't have the time to get into the details, but one way this happened really, really very much was that there was a time when this became really a tension between, say, for instance, African black people in this country and then, say, Native Americans and then other immigrants. Why? Because given the history of this country, many black people in this country, African Americans and Native Americans, did not receive the good education or opportunities for good education. Okay? I don't have the time to get into the details, but this is well documented. So this has affected their ability to move up in the system. Okay? Because for you to move up in the system, you have to have certain skills and things like that. But then when we started granting immigrants the permission to come into this country using the H-1B visa, which is based on the kind of knowledge or skills you bring into the country, if there's need for that, either we need nurses, we need IT people or something like that. So we say, okay, we need these people in our economy because it's going to improve our economy. So let's allow a lot of them to come. Now, immediately they come here, some of them, within 2 or 3 years, they will be earning maybe 100,000. And then many people who have been in this country, including white, will say, what's happening? I have been in this country. I was born in this country. But look at how I'm struggling. But then this guy just came. And maybe if the people are white, they may even say subconsciously or unconsciously that I thought I was privileged, but now here is a person with dark skin, but because they have certain skills, they are paid this amount of money, they are living in the suburb, they have this huge house or whatever. All these things are taking place in the United States. So similarly, African Americans who did not receive very good education because of all these historical reasons begin to feel like, well, you're bringing these other minorities, and now even when we talk about diversity and inclusion or whatever, some of the people that are used for diversity and inclusion may not be Native Americans or African Americans, but they may be people from other countries. Now, I'm not trying to criticize, getting into the details to criticize this or that. I'm just trying to describe what has happened. So it has complicated the politics of this country along racial lines. And in many studies, for instance, for quite some time, there has been some tension between, for instance, African immigrants and African Americans. There's tension because of this kind of situation. So I don't have the time to get into the details, but the idea in Louisiana, they call it cutting the line. Cutting the line means there are these white people in Louisiana, they see all these minorities. Even in one book that I read called Strangers in Their Own Land by Ali Hochschild, She said, they said, President Obama and his wife have cut the line. Cut the line simply means being black, they are supposed to be at the back of the line there. So how did he end up, how did they end up attending these Ivy League schools and then ending up also, President Obama ending up becoming the president of the United States? So you see, some of these things tell you the way people are thinking behind their, in the subconscious way. So that's how immigration can affect American politics. And then some politicians capitalize on this. I know there's some maybe anger or whatever, but should we bring people together and try to solve the problem, or should we capitalize on the anger so that we win an election or something like that? Okay, enough about that. 13, economic growth is intimately connected to trends in social welfare. As a country becomes richer, social welfare programs usually expand, or are usually expanded regardless of political party. And this is something that I think is very important for us to take note of. Even though some parties are more willing to embark on social welfare projects or things like that, okay, remember that, for instance, I think President Obama wanted to pass a law that will make community schools, access to community college education free, okay, so that it can help some people. It's kind of like a social welfare policy in the area of education, because some people want to go to school, but they do not have the money. So, but the point that is being made here is that as the economy expands, ideally, as the economy expands, we expect that there's going to be more investment in social welfare. But as the economy contracts, then there will be less spending. So in this case, all of us have an interest or vested interest in the economy to expand, because when it expands, it's kind of like something they call trickle-down economics. Trickle-down means if the people at the top are doing very well, then a lot will trickle down to the bottom or something like that. Now, there are some people who have raised criticisms against this, but I don't have the time to get into that. But I have cited a book, Moral Consequences of Economic Growth, just to give you an example. This is a book written by a professor, I believe, at Harvard University, Benjamin Friedman. Benjamin Friedman, in Moral Consequences of Economic Growth, is making an argument along this line. He said, when people feel very secure in their lives, they are more kind of compassionate. They are more willing to help another person because they feel secure, okay? But if somebody feels very insecure in his or her life, okay, then if you try to help the poor, they get so angry. Why? Because we know that the money that is used to help the poor is through taxation, so you are taxing some people, okay? So Benjamin Friedman, in his book, The Moral Consequences of Economic Growth, is saying that economic growth has moral consequences. What are the moral consequences? If the economic growth is really the type that is inclusive, everybody is benefiting or whatever, if the people at the top are secure, they tend to be more generous and help other people, okay? But if they feel insecure, they are most likely to be very angry about any attempt to take something through taxation or something to help that. So in this case, he is making a moral argument for economic growth, okay? Because when there's economic growth, the poor are going to benefit from that through social welfare programs. Now, in the textbook, you're going to find out that there was a time in the United States when this did not really work, because you're going to find out that even when there are a lot of benefits in the U.S. economy, sometimes it is the top 5% or 1% or 10% that benefit most of it compared to the low 50%, the bottom 50% and things like that. And then lastly, during the colonial period, there was a strong ideology that says human beings have original sin, which is perceived as the source of moral failure of many poor people. Now, remember that I say ideology here. I think in the Christian tradition, original sin is not an ideology, but it is part of the teaching in Christianity. Okay, but some people in social welfare literature, they just say it is an ideology. Okay, so what does this mean? The idea of original sin simply means that since the fall of Adam and Eve, we are all born with original sin, so we are all sinners. So there's a way this argument is used to show that, like, if you study the literature, for instance, very, very carefully, you're going to see how black people are perceived as something that their problems started, the genealogy of their problems goes back to when Ham was cast. Some people will say there is no. If you get theologians, they will say no, it has no connection. But there was a time this idea was very popular in the United States that black people are the descendant of Ham, and Noah, who is the father of Ham, cursed him and say he's going to be a slave to his brother, because when Noah got drunk, Ham just looked at his father's nudity and just laughed. But the other son decided to get a piece of cloth and walk backwards without seeing the father's nudity and cover the father's nudity, because he wanted to respect his father. And when the father understood what happened, this was what happened. Okay? So the point I'm just trying to say is to ignore somebody or to treat somebody unfairly simply because you think that they have original sin. It's really an issue. One argument I would like to make for those people who are interested in this is that if you try to explain what is happening in the world today or what is happening in the United States because of you use original sin to explain it, one argument to make is that the concept of original sin applies to all human beings as if in a flat manner. What I mean by in a flat manner is that it doesn't matter whether you are born in the 1st century, in the 10th century, in the 15th century, in the 19th century, or in the 20th century. You are having original sin. You can't claim that. I cannot claim that because I'm in the 21st century, my original sin is 5%, okay, or 10%. I have the same original sin like any other person. So, but why is it that we used to have slavery in this country, even though we had original sin, and we still have original sin now, but we don't have slavery? Well, the argument there, or the thing you need to think about, is the kind of institutional arrangements in a society can allow for a higher or lower expression of original sin. Remember, St. Augustine said, without justice, we're all a gang of robbers in the city of God, his book, The City of God. So if there's no justice that is fair and inclusive for everybody, of course, the rich and the powerful will just kind of trample upon the poor, okay? But when you have justice through the institutional arrangements in a society, then there are many things that would ordinarily happen that are unjust, but they would not really happen. So the point I'm trying to make as a kind of caution against the idea of original sin is that even though we don't have slavery today in the United States, you cannot say biblically, based on the orthodox teaching of Christianity, that, oh, the reason why we do not have slavery today in the United States is simply because today we're in the 21st century, so we have only 10% of original sin, but maybe during the time of slavery, before the Civil War, they had like maybe 100% original sin or 90. No, it's the question of institutional arrangements. Institutions are what tell us or discipline us to do the right thing. Even if I want to take away something from somebody, the institution that will discipline me in society and say, okay, there are ways you can get this. You have to do this, this, and that. But you cannot go and just get somebody just getting into their car. You force them to get the key at gunpoint and then drive their car away. Okay? So institutions help us to discipline ourselves. And I think in the United States, over time, I'm not saying we are a 100% perfect country, but over time, we have made significant progress in creating institutions that discipline us to treat each other as fair. Thank you very much.